What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Valley coming at you with the one, the only, the legendary, the certified fantabulous, Mr. Grant Hughes. We are here to talk about the biggest surprises and disappointments of the season. We're looking at only teams and how they have performed relative to their over-under. We'll have a different type of podcast like this towards the end of the season where we'll reveal the winner of our over-under competition from our Discord members, which that's a good reminder to come in and get in our Discord because you can participate next year. And as another reminder, the winner this year will get a free piece of merch of their choice, but they will have the option if they would like to co-host a podcast that's some sort of a mailbag, or maybe we'll run back. We haven't done any guest players this year. Like that's basically, I would say, the equivalent financially of like $1 million at least. What say you, Grant?
Easy. And we will be paying that in a crypto that we have just minted that might actually have negative value. So $1 million in negative value.
Yeah, I'm in the process of converting my Tua coin, Hawk Tua coin, so that I can invest everything.
How's that investment going for you? Pretty good?
I haven't looked at it. I'm sure it's fine. Why would it be weird? But
can't be bad.
So we're going to start with the biggest overachievers. We're going 5-5 on both ends, and we'll do a recap at the end. You'll see it on screen if you're watching on YouTube of anything else that stands out where you're seeing what teams are on pace to do relative to their over-under. And like I said, this isn't final. We have about a quarter, a little bit more, maybe like a third of the season left to go. But this will be interesting to see which teams have performed the best so far relative to their respective over-unders. Let's get started. First up, Grant, number one overachiever, the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're on a 67-win pace, 18.5 wins over their initial over-under. Does this surprise you at all? You didn't have them earmarked for around 70 wins leading into the season? What's wrong with you?
I didn't, and we didn't, but we did have this over real hard. We're not going to do this on every one of them, but this was one of the easier ones on the board, I thought. And yeah, like you shouldn't ever project a team unless you're talking about, we might have done it for the Celtics at some point, or the Thunder actually this year, but this is a ridiculous pace, but like 48.5. Like why would anyone go under this one? They've exceeded that, but I mean, come on.
Yeah, I think if anything, there was an underestimation of not just the talent in place, but the impact that Kenny Atkinson would have on their offense specifically. It just feels way more dynamic than it was last year.
And the Mobley leap happened, but not because he is taking 10 threes a game. It's just he got way better at a lot of offensive things, and that turns out to be just as valuable.
I have a question. Well, actually, I'll save it for, will we get to the Thunder? Let's let the mystery include. Number two, biggest surprise relative to over-under. The Detroit Pistons had a 25.5 over-under. They are currently on a 43-win pace. So that is 17.5 over their initial projection. This is not surprising given what happened, but I don't think either of us would have pegged them as being one of the biggest overachievers this year leading into the season.
No, and another coaching change situation, not necessarily from like a decent coach to a very good one, but from a coach that had no desire to be there to a coach that did. I mean, ironically, the Cavs coach shows up here, and they're like maybe so. Wait till the Pistons hire Kenny Atkinson, I guess, is probably the takeaway.
Yeah, well, man, they're going to be a contender after that. To your credit, you did go over. I went under.
I couldn't remember.
They were the team one of the teams that I said I had to pull wins from. I clearly did not have to, and I was clearly wrong to, but an excellent season by them and sets up an intriguing future. They were not like the Cavs. I think you could have envisioned. We did predict over, but if we would have said this, in August or whatever, like the Cavs are going to outperform their win projections by the most in the league. I could have been like, yeah, if you would have said that about the Pistons, I guess 25.5 was low enough to where you could at least imagine it, but it's not something I would have bought into.
No, if you'd said 40.5 for Detroit, we would have gone under so fast, and they're going to crush that.
Number three, the Portland Trailblazers. This one's probably the most surprising one so far that we've had. Over under of 21.5. They're currently on pace for a whopping 34 wins. Would not shock me if they just end up with more than that because of how they've been playing over the past month or so. So a 12.5 bump from their win-loss estimate. This gets you, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, some of the young guys got better and they have enough. I mean, we did talk about little like minor victory lap for us because we did say, like, look how many, basically, I'm paraphrasing us, like, oh my God, look how many guys they have. Like they could really just like be good, be not good, but like they might not be terrible. I don't know that I would have gone this high potentially, but yeah, it's a little strength in numbers kind of situation with them. They've got enough good players to have like some really interesting lineups all the time.
And they have not full. I mean, the problem is, so Scoot Henderson got a lot better. A lot of people probably didn't see that. Denny Avdia didn't start out the season too great. His fit now looks cleaner. Tamani Kamara is just one of the most valuable players in the NBA.
Just good.
Donovan Clingan's outperformed my expectations, even though he hasn't necessarily played a crap ton of minutes this year. And you could say, and they also haven't run their team like a traditional tank job. But
Yeah.
I pointed this out to Mort when we were talking. They're winning games by like, aside from really Jeremy Grant, and then before he was injured, DeAndre Ayton, like they're winning games by playing the players that you would want them to invest minutes in.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of having it both ways. I still think we would have liked them to sell off some of those guys, but maybe there just was no market for it.
Jeremy Grant still being there, and he's sometimes, I don't need to watch him dribble into another like fadeaway mid-range jumper. I'm good with that. So on this team, number 4, this man, another shock here. The Nets, Grant, were projected for 18.5. Their current win rate is 30, and they were higher. They had to trade Dennis Schroeder to make sure they got lower. That's a difference of 11.5. And they're still scrappy as hell when you watch. They just lost to the Cavaliers, and like it was just closer than as any business being when you're looking at who's on the floor.
I mean, way to get your pick back and not do anything with it, guys. Like I mean, I don't know. This is one of those where I think it's, if you care about like establishing a culture, this is a huge win because like you said, they do play really hard. I think Jordi Fernandez is going to be a really good coach, and there's some value in, setting a baseline for like, hey, we play this way. Do you think they want to be this far over their projected number?
No. But I also, we're at the point now, what are they? They have the 5th worst record. They have the 6th worst record in the league, and that's what where they're projected to land. They're 3 losses in front of the Raptors, 5 losses in front of the Hornets, 6 in front of the Jazz, 7 in front of the Pelicans, and I mean, no one's like the Wizards are. They're 10 in front of the. Like, how far down can they actually tumble now, though? So was it sort of they didn't do enough? Like, even though they acted fairly early relative to the rest of the league, did they not act early enough to kind of nip this in the bud?
Yeah, that's the thing, though. They didn't wait till the deadline. Finney Smith and Schroeder were gone early. I don't know what else they really could have done. I don't know. Like they just play too hard and they're too well coached to be that bad, I guess. Good for them.
And by the way, the players are not going to ever tank on purpose. It's on the front office and even the coaching staff. It's on the front office to force you to have players in place who aren't going to win or be competitive. And just the Nets have, every iteration of them has outperformed what they look like on paper. So Jordi Fernandez must go, I think, is the moral of this story. Our final biggest surprise to be this good and still rank as one of the 5 biggest overachievers, whatever you want to call it. The Oklahoma City Thunder had an over-under of 56.5. They're also currently on pace to win 67. So they're outperforming expectations, over-under expectations by 10.5. That is insane.
Yeah. I mean, one of the best defenses ever, an MVP front runner. Like, that's how you get 60 plus wins. I mean, they were young enough and there were enough new additions that, I mean, that's the thing, is part of the reason the over was easy is because of the new additions. But I guess you could talk yourself into like, oh, we don't know about the fit or any of that. Like, let's
go one step further. Had I told you that Chet Holmgren would miss more than half the season,
right,
Isaiah Hartenstein and him would not play together for basically more than half the season, and that Jalen Williams would be contesting more shots at the rim than anybody in the league, as a percentage of like shots that are being taken when he's on the court, would you have then guessed that the Thunder would go on to win 67 games?
Yeah, right. And that Caruso would miss a ton of time too. And then even in spite of that, this like defensive linchpin that you got on the perimeter, your defense is still going to run away with the best rating in the league. Like, I mean, some expectation defying here for sure, but at the same time, like, we knew the Thunder were going to be good.
Now, I have a question for you since we finally got to the Thunder. only once in NBA history. It was the 73 win Warriors, and then that same season, the Spurs won 67 games. We've only had two teams win 67 or more games twice. Do you think it happens again this year? The caveat being the Thunder and the Cavs, they've already won over 80% of their games, but they must continue winning more than 80% of their games to do it.
I don't think it'll happen, and it has everything to do with the size of the leads they both have on the teams in second in the conference. And I mean, it just the historical precedent is such that you should bet against it. But I think like if the races were closer, like as we look at it now, Denver's in second in the West, and they're 8 games back. Like the Cavs margin's 5.5 over the Celtics. So like, I don't know. I don't think either of them is going to push for a bunch of extra wins. Certainly like the last 2 weeks of the season, we might see some like mass resting.
While I agree with what you said, I'm just going to say that it happens because one, unlike you, I don't hate fun. But two, isn't there also a chance that these teams are just so deep that even when they're not putting their best product forward, they're still going to be better than most of the competition? And so unless we start seeing them sit all their guys against, if it's Cleveland, it's Boston, it's New York, or the Thunder against Denver, or like, isn't there the Thunder specifically might just not play their top 3 players and still win basketball games anyway.
Yeah, no, there's no chance because that would be fun. And we've established I'm out for that reason. I'm out on fun.
Would you care to guess? Let's see if you can do this. Who is the biggest underachiever this season relative to their preseason over under?
Is it yours and mine, New Orleans Pelicans?
It is. This is Pelicans fans, look away if you're watching on YouTube.
Oh boy.
They had a 45.5. They're currently on pace to win 19 games. That's a difference of 26.5 victories in the wrong direction. I mean, it's just, if this was the season from literal hell.
This is Memphis 2 years ago. It's just everybody was hurt the whole time. That's just, or no suspensions, but everybody was hurt. That's it.
I will say their future seems a little bit bleaker than that Memphis teams did because this is like a larger symptom of, okay, well, how healthy can Zion be? And now DeJounte Murray, that Achilles injury doesn't just fuck this season. It might fuck next season too. They're in like a really weird spot. Do we think that they get over 20 wins though? Because they're currently on pace for 19. Zion's been pretty good when he plays.
He has. And I mean, I was going to say, let's talk about bright spots. Trey Murphy looking really good. Playmaking leap, higher usage, good shooter. Yves Missi, nice find.
Injured? Also injured.
I will say they will not get over 20.
I'm going to say they get over 20 because, as you said, late season shenanigans. And they also don't have to worry about, like, they're going to have one of the 4 worst records in the league. That's just a given. The second most disappointing team, did you want to take a guess here? I feel like there's another one you should get.
Oh, God. Phoenix.
No.
Oh.
Come on.
Oh, right.
Philly.
Oh, right. The most disappointing team on planet Earth. Got it.
52.5. Anecdotally, they are. Between them or Phoenix would make sense. 52.5 was their projection. They're on pace to win 30. So they've gone 22.5 in the wrong direction. Grant, do you remember if you went over or under on their total?
I bet I went over.
We both went under because we are geniuses.
Because we're smart.
Don't ask me what we predicted or at least don't ask me what I predicted for the Pistons. So this is, I think you can say on some level, this is the season from hell for them too, because of what happened with Joel Embiid. And then McCain breaks out only to now he's done for the year. What's going on with Paul George? At the same time, this is like, isn't it another thing with the Pelicans where it's this worst case scenario was, yes, it was their worst case, but it was also completely, you could envision it.
Right.
This way.
If you had asked like, hey, how's it going to go bad? You would have come up with this. The McCain part is the surprise because there were people that thought McCain was such a steal of a pick. And then for him to get hurt, like you probably wouldn't have actually been comfortable predicting any aspect of McCain, the good and the bad. But yeah, the Embiid health, George health / like just kind of looking his age. I think you could have, of course, like that's what you would have drawn up as like the downside, as a likely downside.
I think probably the biggest surprise, aside from just like where we're like, oh, should they tank? Should Joel Embiid shut it down for the rest of the year? Is just they've lost the minutes so far per cleaning the glass when the big 3 have played together.
Yeah,
that's probably not something I would have predicted.
And I think too, if you'd said, what's their over under if Embiid doesn't play all year? you might have still gone over 30, right? Like you would have said there's enough talent here to, they'll win, 35 games.
Right, because the entire point, or at least not the entire, like part of the theory of having a Paul George and then with Tyrese Maxey was, okay, you're built to navigate the stretch without Embiid. And you looked at them getting Andre Drummond and thinking sort of the same thing. Oh, they have like a stopgap at center. And but it's not Drummond. It's because Yabusele's been really good this year.
What a weird year.
Did you want to take a stab at the third most?
Well, I already said Phoenix. Can I say them again?
You can, but only if you want to be incorrect.
I'm happy to be incorrect.
It's the Utah Jazz. They had an over-under of 28.5. They're currently on pace to win 20. So that's a difference of 8.5 in the wrong direction. Would you care to know if you have them as the over-under? You want to take a guess at that?
I really hope I said under.
We both had under. We both viewed it, and I mean, this is correct. I don't know how good you want to feel about their future was. They can't afford not to just be awful this year. And they understand the plot, unlike the previous 2 seasons.
Yeah. I mean, 28.5 is, I wonder where that came from. Like, what's the theory of them? I guess like, Markkanen plays a fully healthy season and the young guys that weren't very good last year are all better. Like they're still, the incentives are what they are. This draft class is like, you gotta tank this year if you're ever going to do it.
And honestly, if anything too, you would have assumed that like these projections would have kicked in that, all the veterans won't finish the season on the team. We knew Markkanen would, but then they proceeded to trade none of them anyway. So it's just like, and they're still going to miss it. Good job by the Jazz. I was worried that Will Hardy was going to get fired for conduct not detrimental enough to the team, and it's clear that he won't. Would you say, my question on them, and this is probably worth its own podcast, so just very quick, are they under like the most pressure to caps lock hit on this draft of any like team that's going to be in the top, 7, 8 picks?
I think, I'm trying to think if is anybody even close.
I guess Brooklyn, I think, has a case, but while their window to be really bad is small at the moment, like just the 2 years, they are still just in the early stages of it all. This is kind of year 3 of the Jazz's reset.
Then it has to be them. Like you might say Washington just because, but they're early too. And like maybe they've got enough cracks at it. From what we know of the previous high picks that the Jazz have made, like there ain't a cornerstone in there. So you've had 2 shots at it. So this one has to hit.
Do you want to take a guess at the 4th most disappointing team?
Should I say Phoenix again?
You should, because they're the answer.
Yeah.
So I don't even want to say I had them projected for so many wins. This is just, man, I miss all the time, but this is egregious. 47.5 was their over-under. They're on pace, Grant, for 39 wins. That's a difference of also 8.5. You can explain it. Like we've seen it. We've watched it just kind of implode in real time. This is disastrous for them because we're at the point where last season they were fairly disappointing, but you could say, I've seen enough to think, or maybe I haven't seen enough to think that they get to the play. People projected they were going to beat Minnesota last year. Like that was, I think you might've even been one of them.
Could have.
And now I don't think, let's say they get into the playoffs by virtue of the play-in, which isn't guaranteed. I have zero faith. Like what is the team they would need to face in the first round for you to think they get more than a game?
Yeah, it's brutal. Like I don't think if you get more than a game, like who knows? You might get a Booker Durant combined heater, but they're just not defensively non-threatening. Offensively, the whole is way less than the sum of the parts. And like we've talked about before, like it's not like they were decimated by injury. Like this is like fairly close to what they were going for roster wise. And this is man, that's rough.
You want to take a guess at the final the 5th most disappointing team, and the last one we'll talk about?
I'm going to go higher up the standings a little bit and say, there's 2 candidates. I'm just going to change my answer. I was going to say Dallas. I'm going to say Orlando.
Okay, both of those are wrong. It's the Charlotte Hornets. They had an over-under of 29.5, and they're on pace to win 21. That's also a difference of 8.5. This is another situation. It's not LaMelo. He's missed time, but it's okay. Now Brandon Miller's done for the year. Mark Williams was never healthy and they tried to trade him. And then he proceeded to play another bad game, like against the team that was supposed to trade for him. Sorry. I don't mean to laugh. That's not funny, except it is. This is like kind of explainable. And I think it's almost encouraging because I probably did pick the over for them. I said if LaMelo was going to be healthy, there's enough talent here. And yeah, I did hit the over. Oh, you hit the over as well. So we were both wrong. But I'm like, this is the Jazz, you look at it and say, okay, I'm okay that they're on this list.
Mhm.
And I'm okay with the Hornets being on this list. They're going to get another top pick. They have LaMelo. They have Brandon Miller. There's things they need to figure out. But I think the organization is at least focused on the bigger picture, which is just not something that you could say ever, like before these past 2 seasons.
Yeah, I think right. I think the overall, it's a good thing that they're here, and I guess the miss just was LaMelo alone. Even he's missed enough time to where we can take a pass. But like, I think we both were just kind of the mind that if LaMelo plays a healthy season, like this team, just the offense will be good enough to offset however bad the defense is. And Miller's out too. Like there's a lot of cover here for the Hornets to be this bad and not feel too disappointed about it.
All right, let's throw on the full screen look of how all these teams are performing to see if anything else stands out to us and you, Grant. Any other teams you're kind of looking at this? Like I said, on the screen, we have all the teams if you want to check it out on YouTube by how many wins they're going to exceed or miss their over-under by.
I think it's interesting. Don't you? I think we had some pretty like tough conversations about the Pacers, like, oh, how, phony conference finalist and they're going to basically hit their number. That's the one that jumps out. Same with the Knicks. Actually, they're right there. They're half a win over. Just the ones that are actually close are the kind of the most interesting to me. I'm trying to think they're the Celtics too, which was a high number. Yeah, those 3 kind of leap out. Anything jump out to you?
I obviously Orlando, but like that's one that at least can be explained. I mean, their inability to address the shooting issues and just the overarching offensive issues remains annoying. I will say the Spurs are currently on pace to outperform their over under in light of the Wemby absence. They'll probably end up skewing in a different direction. One that's really standing out to me, and it's just they should be ashamed, is like, why are the Bulls about to outperform themselves by 5 victories?
I was just gonna say, what are you guys doing? That has to be like the biggest mistake, right? Of any of these. Like, why? The Kings being 4.5 under, they were trying to win. Like that's the goal there. That's pretty disappointing.
And I'm like, I can't remember what I did with the Raptors, and they've just been injured and clearly not focused on this. I, of course, hit the over. I always smash the Raptors over. I'm an idiot.
I'm surprised though. 4.5 under seems like they're way worse than that,
But when you look, yeah, it seems like you're right. It does feel like given how much time Barnes and Quickly missed, and like now they make the Brandon Ingram trade and he's banged up and they've dealt with other injuries. Yeah. So it's like, I guess it's almost impressive, but I got to stop hitting the Raptors over. What the hell's the matter with me? Are you, I know a lot of people assume that like bad teams probably aren't supposed to miss their over under by that much. I'm almost shocked though that the Wizards are like that. I think speaks to how low their over under was set to begin with, that they didn't miss it. Like they're still 6.5 under and they were projected for 20.5. But that's a team that you would think like, oh no, they're going to figure out a way to be in the double digits. But if you're going to be basically at 21 wins as a projection coming in, I don't know how much lower are you supposed to go?
Right. Yeah. Like mathematically, it's almost like you just shouldn't assume anyone's ever going to win fewer than 20 just because it's happened so rarely. But that was a pretty easy call. What about the Wolves being 7.5 under? Like that's just, speaks to a disappointing one, but like nobody seemed all that concerned about the cat for Randall and DiVincenzo trade. Maybe everybody thought like, oh, that doesn't matter. Edwards is just like on a rocket ship to the moon and that'll offset everything. 7.5 under is a big number for a good team.
Yeah, they were 52.5 and we both hit the under, and we recorded this. I think we did ours after the Karl Anthony Towns trade.
I hope
because
so.
If I remember correctly, we did league pass rankings. We did 3 hours and it became null and void because of that trade. We never even published it, or it went up at the NBA podcast. So by the way, another one that stands out just sort of to like reinforces what the fuck is going to go on here. Miami missing by 5.5 when we're used to them, even amid injuries and drama, they tend to overperform during the regular season, or at least like they always just seem to figure out a way. And so I guess in previous years, if you would have seen them miss by 5.5 wins, you might say, oh, like they're going to be fine in the postseason and moving forward. And now they've kind of entered the territory where I don't think they deserve that type of benefit of the doubt.
A duo here for very different reasons. The LA teams both being 7.5 over. Like the Clippers, we thought were a decent candidate to be like, oh, they're going to be in the teens, maybe. Like that could happen. And then it's really hard to for the Lakers to like exceed public opinion because their numbers are always skewed high, and the Lakers are 7.5 over, which is like, I don't know how that happened.
But the Clippers were another team. I said this at the time that I was just ripping victories. I said they were going to be awful. Yeah. I destroyed their offseason. 7.5. I guess they were working from a lower baseline. But yeah, the Lakers, this is just, and all these vitals, aside from their actual record, point to a team that is not this good. But at some point, I guess you just have to trust the wins and losses and the wins. And they're just, you mentioned this during our previous pod where they look like, I know they have some personnel, but they look like they should be god awful on defense now, post Anthony Davis trade. And maybe it goes that way, but it's yet to go that way.
Right. They've made it far enough to where you have to sprinkle in a little doubt that it's going to fall apart.
Are you upset that the Warriors are on pace to miss? But I bet the Warriors, if I had to pick a team that's in the red right now that I think finishes in the green, I mean, they're just, the margin's so thin. So it's the Warriors by default.
Yeah, I think that's right. I suspect I went over pretty hard. But I mean, yeah, they should get to what, so this means, I'm trying to do some quick math. I think they were at like 46 or 47 or something like that preseason. They got some work to do to get there, but it's possible.
And for those interested, I will never count this as betting advice, but you should continue to short whatever I say about the Grizzlies, because this is going to be, I think, like the 6th year running. I hit their under. They are going to go over. Last year, I went under for so many years. They kept exceeding it. The one year I go over, they were terrible. I went under again. They've been mostly awesome. So just keep that in mind for futures. And then finally, like, if the Hawks still finish in the green after what happened, I don't understand where that team is going or where it's headed. I can kind of see the theory of what they're trying to build around Trae Young, but I don't trust it. And if they wind up outperforming a win total that was, I think, spot on, like 35.5, if they end up with like 40, 41 wins, I'll be pretty impressed.
Yeah. The Grizzlies' last season performance is pretty clear proof that it is very much personal, like between them and you. They just don't want you to be right ever.
You got anything else, or are you ready to take us out of here?
I think we covered every storyline there is to cover. Thanks everybody for listening, for watching. Please remember, rate, review, subscribe wherever you're listening. Join our Discord, links in the YouTube and podcast description. I think that's going to cover it. We close as always with shouts to Frank Ntilikina and apologies to Jared Allen.